Returning to humanity's need for comfort, it is of course real, but isn't there something childish in the belief that the universe owes us comfort as of right? Isaac Asimov's remark about the infantilism of pseudoscience is just as applicable to religion. Inspect every piece of pseudoscience and you will find a security blanket, a thumb to suck, a skirt to hold. It is astonishing, moreover, how many people are unable to understand that X is comforting does not imply X is true. A related plaint concerns the need for a purpose in life. To quote one Canadian critic, "The atheist may be right about God, who knows? But God or no God, it's clear that something in the human soul requires a belief that life has a purpose that transcends the material plane." One would think that a more rational than thou empiricist such as Dawkins would recognize this unchanging aspect of human nature. Does Dawkins really think this world would be a more humane place if we all looked to the God Delusion instead of the Bible for truth and comfort? Actually, yes. Since you mention humane, yes, I do. But I must repeat yet again that the consolation content of a belief does not raise its truth value. Of course, I cannot deny the need for emotional comfort, and I cannot claim that the worldview adopted in this book offers any more than moderate comfort to, for example, the bereaved. But if the comfort that religion seems to offer is founded on the neurologically highly implausible premise that we survive the death of our brains, do you really want to defend it? In any case, I don't think I've ever met anyone at a funeral who dissents from the view that the non-religious part, eulogies, the deceased's favourite poems or music, are more moving than the prayers. Having read The God Delusion, Dr. David Ashton, a British consultant physician, wrote to me on the unexpected death on Christmas Day 2006 of his beloved 17-year-old son, Luke. Shortly before Luke's death, the two of them had talked appreciatively of the charitable foundation that I'm setting up to encourage reason and science. At Luke's funeral on the Isle of Man, his father suggested to the congregation that if they wished to make any kind of contribution in Luke's memory, they should send it to my foundation, as Luke would have wished. The 30 cheques received amounted to more than £2,000, including more than £600 from a whip round in the local village pub. This boy was obviously much loved. When I read the order of service for the funeral ceremony, I literally wept, although I had never met Luke, and I asked for permission to reproduce it at richarddawkins.net. A lone piper played the Manx Lament, Elin Valin. Two friends spoke eulogies. Dr. Ashton himself recited Dylan Thomas's beautiful poem, Fern Hill. Now as I was young and easy under the apple boughs, so achingly evocative of lost youth. And then I catch my breath to report he read the opening lines of my own Unweaving the Rainbow, lines that I have long earmarked for my own funeral. We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they are never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place but who will in fact never see the light of day outnumber the sand grains of Sahara. Certainly those unborn ghosts include greater poets than Keats, scientists greater than Newton. We know this because the set of possible people allowed by our DNA so massively outnumbers the set of actual people. In the teeth of these stupefying odds, it is you and I, in our ordinariness, that are here. We privileged few who won the lottery of birth against all odds, how dare we whine at our inevitable return to that prior state from which the vast majority have never stirred? Obviously, there are exceptions, but I suspect that for many people, the main reason they cling to religion is not that it is consoling, but that they've been let down by our educational system and don't realize that non-belief is even an option. This is certainly true of most people who think they are creationists. They've simply not been properly taught Darwin's astounding alternative. Probably the same is true of the belittling myth that people need religion. At a recent conference in 2006, an anthropologist and prize specimen of I'm an atheist buttery quoted Golda Meir when asked whether she believed in God. "I believe in the Jewish people, and the Jewish people believe in God." Our anthropologist substituted his own version. "I believe in people, and people believe in God." I prefer to say that I believe in people, and people, when given the right encouragement to think for themselves about all the information now available, very often turn out not to believe in God, and to lead fulfilled and satisfied, indeed liberated, lives.
The phrase "a whip round at the local pub."
The question is about the phrase "whip round at a local pub." This must be one of those places where we are, what is it, divided by a common language. A whip round, you pass a hat round the pub, the inn, the beer house, and everybody puts something in the hat. This boy, Luke Ashton, £600, that's $1,200, were raised by passing a hat round the pub.
Is it whip?
Whip, W-H-I-P, yes.
Question, Dr. Dawkins.
Yes.
Stephen Weinberg wrote a critique on Times Online, 5 pages. It was very favorable, but did comment that you didn't really take to task in your book, The God Delusion, the fundamentalist Islamics creating all kinds of problems around the world as much as you did American fundamentalists. Would you care to comment about his comment?
I was brought up Christian. I'm a cultural Anglican, and Christianity is what I know best. So naturally I concentrated most on what I know best. It is certainly true that Islam in the world is probably the major evil, and it would be very desirable to write a book which spends more time criticizing Islam. Fortunately, very shortly after mine came out, Christopher Hitchens brought out God Is Not Great, which is a marvelous book and which really does do justice to Islam. I strongly recommend God Is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens.
You often have two general sort of attacks on your books or on your writings in general. I put them in two categories. One, ad hominem, which is easily dismissible if you have your eloquence and your stamina. The other one is the sort of Mel Konner approach, and you mentioned it a little bit. The why bother, and that's also sort of I chalk it up to intellectual laziness or intellectual dishonesty. If you had an actual challenging or reasonable response to your book, which one would you consider the most challenging for you to reply to, besides ad hominems or the intellectual laziness or intellectual dishonesty?
Okay, so you're dismissing both those. You're dismissing both the ad hominem and the why bother approach, and you're asking me what would be the best criticism I could imagine.
Well, I think you do a good enough job of dealing with the ad hominems and dealing with the intellectual laziness.
I'm just asking whether I've understood you correctly. Okay, fine. So what would be the best criticism? I think the best criticism would be any kind of suggestion that there really is good evidence that some kind of supernatural being exists. And I don't believe there is a single review of the God Delusion or either of Sam Harris's 2 books or Christopher Hitchens' book. Not one of them has actually suggested that there is any evidence whatsoever for any kind of supernatural being at all. So they're nearly all the criticisms are either ad hominem or why bother or why don't you read more theology. Not a single one of them actually produces any kind of positive case for the existence of any kind of God. But that would be a good criticism if anybody could come up with one. I think it's revealing that nobody has. I don't believe anybody could.
I was wondering if you could comment some on sort of the process of creating public opinion that's going on in this country around atheism. To me, it's pretty unprecedented to see the cover of Wired magazine or articles in Newsweek on atheism, and it seems that books are obviously an impetus for this, but I'm wondering what other processes are at work here. I saw a speech you gave at TED in 2002. And this is a gathering of 1,000 elite businessmen and artists and technology people in Monterey every year. And you called upon them to, as probable non-believers, to step forward and finance and help this. I'm wondering if that has happened at all, and sort of what's going on here.